Jazakallah, Mulana Mubin Sahab, for that beautiful and generous introduction. Alhamdulillah, today I am blessed with the opportunity of speaking with you all about Eesa alayhi salam and his life. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he speaks quite extensively on the topic of Eesa alayhi salam. There's multiple chapters dedicated to his life. The chapter of Al Imran, the chapter of Ma'idah, the chapter of Surah Maryam, and in other chapters as well he's also mentioned. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he likes to use certain figures to create a certain effect. So he won't just simply bring the story, but he will bring the mention because he wants to cultivate a certain feeling, a certain environment. And from my personal experience, I found that the story of Eesa alayhi salam is that of tawakkul and trust in Allah. And it goes, and his whole story, it would be best to be described as something that Allah shows his mastery of how he plans events and how he makes things work in the long term, even if you can't see how things are working now. And through the concept of trusting Allah in such a way that even when there feels to be no hope, that you still trust Him and you still push forward with what He's told you to do until you feel the fruits and the results of what He's made us do. So to understand Eesa alayhi salam right from the beginning, we have to first look at his origins and where he comes from. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he describes Eesa alayhi salam, he describes him first in Surah Al Imran. But the best verse to describe him would be in Surah Ma'idah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا الْمَسِيحُ عِيسَى ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِن قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ كَانَ يَأْكُلَانِ الطَّعَامَ انظُرْ كَيْفَ نُبَيِّنُ لَهُمُ الْآيَاتِ ثُمَّ انظُرْ أَنَّا يُؤْفَكُونَ. The son of Isa, the Messiah, the son of Maryam, is nothing but a Rasul. And before him have come Rasul as well. And his mother was a trustworthy, a truthful woman. And they both you should eat. Watch how we make them as a sign for the people. And watch how even then they turn away from our signs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by mentioning that he's nothing but a Rasul. So immediately he negates the belief that he is anything divine, anything of supernatural origin. He's simply a human. And he's been sent as a prophet, as a messenger, just like the prophets that came before him. Adam alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the beauty of this is that the Quran was sent to a community that believed in the previous prophets as well. So Eesa alayhi salam, in his community, he was sent to the Jews. The Jews, they already believed in Musa alayhi salam. They were aware of Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, all of these other prophets that they were descended from. The Arabs, which Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was descended from, again, they were descended from Ibrahim alayhi salam himself, so they knew about him. They knew about Musa alayhi salam. They knew about Harun alayhi salam, the previous prophets as well. So all of these people, they had significance to them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this قَدْ خَلَتْ مِن قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ to illustrate the fact that these Anbiya alayhim salam, they were all part of a larger picture. Their job wasn't to simply come and create a new religion or to recreate something. But no, their job was part of a much larger picture. Adam alayhi salam started first, and he came to earth. And his sharia and his teachings were to teach the humans how to get back to Jannah where they originated from. And then slowly the people veered away from it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Nuh alayhi salam to bring them back to the original message. Then again the people veered away because of their natural enemy Shaitan, who's present with them until the day of Qiyamah. And back and forth, this cycle continued. Until eventually come to Eesa alayhi salam. And Eesa alayhi salam, he's not the final messenger, which he made clear. In Surah Saf, he mentions that there will be a prophet that will come after me. But I'll mention this later. But he understood his place in the cycle of prophethood and the continuing of the message. And his story also shows the deliberation of Allah, of him placing him here in this part of the story. Until the Prophet ﷺ would come. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions that they used to eat food. His mother was truthful and he used to eat food, which seems strangely irrelevant to a point. But the scholar Imam Razi, Fakhruddin Razi, mentions in his tafsir Mafatih al-Ghaib that there are multiple reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions this. Number one, a deity cannot eat, or a deity does not need to eat. The need for eating illustrates that a person has to have some sort of need for something. They've got a haja for something, a need. And if they have a need for something, that means they are dependent on it. And as Ustad mentioned in his introduction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-samad. He needs no one, but everyone needs him. So how can a deity, which is what the Christians believe Eesa alayhi salam to be, how can he be dependent on food if he's supposed to be a deity? that makes it disanalogous. Does not make sense. Another meaning is it makes it more human. It makes the two of them more human, because the deity that eats, anyone that eats, they have to eventually release that food. They have to digest it, they have to process it, and then eventually they have to release it from the body, which naturally results in impurities. There is no creature that is divine that can be considered to be pure if it creates such an impurity. Therefore, Isa alayhi salam and Maryam alayhi salam, both being human, who naturally create these sort of impurities, they cannot be divine, because they're already the origin of something impure. Now, this is already illustrating our beliefs of Isa alayhi salam. That should be enough to understand why he cannot be divine, why he cannot be worshipped, why it is wrong to worship him. To understand his own origins, we have to look at where he came from. Now, to look at this, we don't look at his mother, we actually look at his grandmother Hannah, rahmatullah alayh. Hannah, rahmatullah alayh, in the Bible, she's known as Hannah. And she is the mother of Maryam alayhi salam. Now, her story is mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, where when she falls pregnant with her child, she is obviously unaware of whether it's a boy or a girl. But after a long time of trying, she's overjoyed to finally fall pregnant with a child. So she makes a vow that when this child is born, I will make sure that he goes to the temple and he becomes a scholar, and he studies at the monastery, and he becomes a great scholar like his father Imran before him. So the mother of Maryam alayhi salam was named Imran. Now, this is a bit of a controversy among some circles, because the father of Musa alayhi salam was also known as Imran. So there is a common misconception that they are actually siblings, Maryam alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam. However, it's a common mistake to make. Imran was simply a common name in that tribe. The same way nowadays we might have the same name Ayyan, which is very common nowadays. We might have the same common name Ibrahim or Abdullah. In those days, Imran was simply a common name. So in reality, the father of Imran alayhi salam and the father of Musa alayhi salam and the father of Maryam alayhi salam were centuries apart. They weren't the same person. Now, Maryam, her father was Imran, and he was a scholar. He was considered a very highly regarded scholar within his tribe, within his circle. And when he heard of his wife's pregnancy, he agreed with her vow that we will make sure this child studies and grows up a pious child, becomes a scholar. However, when Maryam alayhi salam was born, her mother was naturally disappointed, because in those days, girls could not become scholars, only men could. So in the Quran it's mentioned, فَلَمَا وَدَعَتْهَا قَالَتْ وَإِنِّي وَدَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى, I have given birth to a girl. But then Allah SWT carries on saying that I know better than, I understand better than you what you have given birth to. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكُرُ كَالْأُنْثَى, the boy is not like the girl. And the mother was worried that because of this she might not have the same capability as her male counterparts. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, how do fear? This is due to my design. So, in accordance to her vow, she still attempted to send her child to the temple to make sure that to ensure that she would fulfill her vow. So when she was given to the temple, the head scholars there, they were all deciding what to do with Maryam, because it's a girl, it's a different situation. We're not entirely sure what to do. It's a boys' monastery. So Zakaria alayhi salam pointed out her name, Maryam. Now the name Maryam has actually been given significance in the Quran, because the name Maryam was given to her by her mother, and it was not a common name. It was a name that was never given to anybody before. So the name Maryam did not actually exist until she was born. And in the Hebrew language, or the Aramaic language, which was the language that people spoke, Maram means to be someone protected. The word Maryam comes from the word Maram. It means someone protected, and it can also mean the word worshipper. And the mother points the significance of this out by saying, وَإِنِّي سَمَّيْتُهَا مَرْيَمَ وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُ بِكَ بِهَا وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. So I've given her this name in the hopes that I seek protection with it in Allah and her progeny against the shaitan, the accursed shaitan. Zakaria alayhi salam pointed this out. Zakaria alayhi salam pointed this out and mentioned that she will have protection. We just need to figure out how to do so. So the scholars decided, okay, what we'll do is we'll all draw lots to decide who will look after her. The method of doing this is that each scholar, they had a pen, and in those days each scholar was known for his pen. What they used to do, they used to keep their pens behind their ears, the same way we keep our pens now. And the sign of a pen on someone's ear meant that person was educated, that person was learned. And a person would be identified by their pen. It was a long process to make a pen. You'd have to grow it from specific breeds, you'd grow it for months, then you'd have to cut the pen, open it in a certain style. So it was significant, it was distinctive depending on the scholar. So each scholar took the pen out and they thought, there's a stream nearby, what we'll do is we'll throw our pens in that stream. Whichever pen floats away, that will decide from those pens who should look after Maryam alayhi salam. When they threw the pens, the uncle of Maryam alayhi salam, he was a scholar there as well. His name was Zakaria alayhi salam. And Zakaria alayhi salam was the chief scholar of the monastery, of the library, of the madrasa that they had. And he cast his pen as well. However, his pen was the only pen to flow away. So the other scholars thought, okay, it might have been a mistake. All the other pens must have caught on something in the stream, whereas his must have been free. So we throw the pens again. They threw the pens again, and they said this time, whichever pen stays behind will be the one that will look after Maryam alayhi salam. Again, the same thing. Zakaria alayhi salam's pen stayed, and the rest of the pens flowed away. They threw a third time, thought maybe it's still a mistake. Just to be on the safe side, let's do it one more time. This time, whichever pen sinks into the water, we will make sure we will pick that scholar to be the guardian of Maryam alayhi salam. And lo and behold, when he threw the pen, his pen was the only pen that sank, and the other pen stayed up. So, Zakaria alayhi salam, seeing this, he was an old man at this time. And in Surah Maryam, he mentions that my hair has turned grey, and my skin has grown weak, my bones have grown weak. And at this point, he still didn't have a child. And he wanted a child to carry on his legacy, or someone to carry on his legacy, like a protege, an apprentice. Those Anbiya alayhi salam that didn't have children, they used to summon one of their followers, and they used to appoint him to be the next prophet. For example, the student of Musa alayhi salam was named Yusha bin Nun alayhi salam, and he became the next prophet after Musa alayhi salam passed away. He's the servant boy that's mentioned in Surah Kahf. In the Surah Musa alayhi salam meets Khidr alayhi salam, and he's the servant boy that carries the fish for Musa alayhi salam. That's Yusha bin Nun alayhi salam. However, Zakaria alayhi salam was unsure who to pick for his successor. So he mentioned to Allah, give me a sign, give me a guidance. Who should I pick for my successor? So Allah said to him, your sign is that I will give you a son yourself. I will give you a son. And Zakaria alayhi salam was shocked, because at this point he was an old man, and his wife, she had never managed to have children. She was described as Aqib in the Quran. Aqib, the word can mean dead or wounded. Essentially something that cannot support life. So he was surprised. He asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can this be? How is it possible that my wife cannot have children? She will have children as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, He will make it happen. Essentially the message behind it is that whatever you're worried about, don't worry about it, I will take care of it. Just do what I tell you to do so. So Zakaria alayhi salam still, just to be on the safe side, he asked Allah, can I have a sign? I want a sign to make me sure that this will happen. Allah said to him, your sign will be that you will be quiet for 3 days. You will not be able to speak. Zakaria thought, okay, fair enough. The next day he sat up to give a speech. A khutbah, the daily Friday prayers. When he mounted the pulpit and he began to speak, he found that his voice was not happening. His voice was not coming out of his throat. He couldn't make a sound. And the people, they became shocked. They were wondering, what's going on? Is he unwell? Is something wrong with him? And Zakaria, on the other hand, was very overjoyed. He was happy. I'm having a child at last. I'm having a success. I'm having someone to take on my efforts, someone to carry on my legacy. Because the legacy of a parent is something that is very important. Humans, we do not have anything that we leave behind except for our children. To look at what makes us different, we look at our choices. And the only reason we make different choices from other people is what we have been influenced by. The biggest influence on us is our parents. A person chooses to make which decisions he wants to based on how his parents brought him up, based on how his parents treated him. So Zakaria alayhi salam knew that I didn't have the opportunity to influence someone else to become the next prophet, to influence someone to become the next carrier of the religion. However, when Yahya alayhi salam was given to him, that obvious enjoyment was there, because now I have finally someone to carry my message even after I pass away. And Allah mentions as well that I'm not just giving you a son, I'm going to make sure he's significant to you. So I will give you the name Yahya. And Allah mentions in the Quran, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ قَبْلِ سَمِيًّا. No one before him has been given this name. Now the name Yahya, it basically means to revive, to bring to life. And the ulama have given two different meanings to this. One, the most obvious meaning was because he gave life to his mother's womb, because she couldn't have him. It's like a barren land that he suddenly had to bring life to. So it was an impossible job that he created. The second meaning would be that he is someone that supports the religion by keeping it alive. And we know him to be, in the Bible, to be John the Baptist. So after Isa passed away, he was the one that kept the religion going. And even in the story, after Isa passed away, even after Isa was raised to the heavens, he was the one that continued the religion until he himself was murdered. But he kept it going on long enough so that Christian religion was established long enough for the Prophet ﷺ to come and build on it and finish the mission. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Yahya alayhi salam to Zakaria alayhi salam in response to the birth of Maryam alayhi salam. Now Maryam alayhi salam, she was brought up in the masjid. She was brought up in the masjid, in the temple, and she was considered to be one of the best students that they had. She was kept. She was given a room of her own in the attic to keep her safe. And it was mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to look after her to such a level that she used to be given fruits that were out of season. It is mentioned in the Quran. Zakaria alayhi salam used to mention, وكفلها زكريا كلما دخل عليها زكريا وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا قالت ومن عند الله إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. She used to get fruits that were out of season, so it would be like having mangoes in winter in Bangladesh. Mangoes don't grow unless they're in the summer, so finding mangoes in the winter is something difficult to imagine. Our modern technology allows us to gain whatever fruits we can whenever we want. However, back then they didn't have them, so it was only a miracle that she would be given that sort of blessing. Now, Maryam alayhi salam was also mentioned that name protected showed up in 2 occasions in her life. Now, this was one occasion. This was 3 occasions in her life. This was one occasion that she was kept safe by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His sustenance. Number 2, eventually the time came for her to travel. The time came for her to travel. So as she was traveling, she ended up meeting a man on the road, and the man wanted to approach her. Now, in her fear of him, she said to him, I fear for you. I fear that I seek refuge in Allah from you, if you are a believer. So the man came closer to her and said, I am not someone that intends harm upon you. I am actually an angel, a messenger from Allah. Now, he came closer to her and he said to her, Allah has given you a son. And she said to him, how can I be given a son when I'm not married? Now, no one has ever touched me. How can I be given a child when no one has ever touched me? Again, the angel gave the same reply to her that that Zakaria was given. If Allah wants something to happen, He will make it happen. There is nothing for you to worry about. So then he came close and he blew in her collar, and then she fell pregnant. 9 months passed, and she traveled alone to a town called Bethlehem, or we know it as Beit Lahem. So eventually, she had to sit down alone, leaning against a palm tree, and she had to give birth. Now, as she gave birth, she was crying, and if anyone was listening, our Imams have actually read this ayat in Salah, from Surah Maryam. She cried, if only I died here, or if only I was something forgotten. Because even though she understood that she was a sign, she understood that the people would not really recognize it. They still assumed that she's done something haram. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the earth speak to her and said, again, don't worry, we will look after you. And the palm tree, after she had given birth, the palm tree she was leaning on bent down. So the fruits came all the way down, right above her face. So she didn't have to stand up. She didn't have to stand up in order for her to grasp the dates and to eat them. And then after that, she took her son back. She took her son back to her city in Jerusalem. When the people saw her, again, they naturally assumed that she had done something haram. But Allah told her that when you meet the people, stay quiet for 3 days. Again, stay quiet for 3 days. The common theme of letting Allah speak instead of you having to do something. Have that trust in Allah. So she went to Bethlehem, and the people started speaking to her. How could you do this? Your father wasn't an immoral man. Nor was your mother. How could this be? So she stayed silent, and she pointed at the baby, doing nothing else. A 3-day-old baby. A 3-day-old baby. And she was told, just point it. And Eesa alayhi salam, he responded. As a 3-day-old baby, he started to speak. He said, I am the slave of Allah, and I have been given the book, and I am a prophet. My job is to continue the job of my predecessors, the job of Adam, the job of Nuh, the job of Ibrahim. That is my job. I have been given the book, the Torah, and I have been charged with giving zakat and praying salah for as long as I live.
How old was he when he spoke?
3 days. 3 days old. I've been sent to teach how to be good to my mother, and peace be upon me from the day I was born to the day I die, to the day I am revived again. And Eesa actually implemented this throughout his entire life. Unlike the other prophets, he was known as Ruhullah. Ruhullah meaning the Spirit of Allah. This isn't something that the Christians believe, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It means that everything he did was influenced by Allah to the point that he acted like an adult, even as a child. As a 12-year-old, he used to engage with the chiefs and he used to point at the corruption in their society. As a child, he used to demonstrate miracles. He used to create clay birds and he used to blow them, he used to bring them to life. He used to hold stone and he would turn it into gold. He would bring the dead back to life. He would cure the born blind. He would cure the people with uncurable disease, leprosy and famine and every other disease you can think of. He cured them. But his job was to be a sign for the people. You watch me and you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided everything from me. All of this was given to him because of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared him, from his grandmother to his mother to him. And it illustrates the importance of being a parent. To make your child successful, the parent themselves has to be successful. They have to provide a ground. They have to themselves be pure enough for the child to be pure.